Welcome everybody to I guess we're going with the grind is what this podcast is going to be called still. And so I'm Devin Murray. I'm here with Jacob McCormick, host of Plug Your
Many
Pod.
different things. No Easy Buckets on YouTube, and then had a podcast a while back. We'll get it going. But yeah, No Easy Buckets usually on
No Easy
all the
Buckets
streams. Yeah.
on YouTube. Check him out.
Yeah.
This is going up on his feed as well. If you're seeing this over on his feed, come check me out over at the Grind Podcast, is what I think the Twitter account is. I'll have to check. I'll put it in the video below. Whatever. I've always wanted to do that. This is my
Yeah.
first thing I'm ever putting on YouTube with the description below. So that's
You got to get
fun.
a subscriber GIF going back and forth too.
Yeah,
You got to
yeah,
find it all.
for sure. Get a Discord going, run that scam. That's definitely on my list of things to do, is to get a betting scam going. Uh, so Jacob, real quick, are you a big better? Let the audience know.
I'm a little bit like I definitely pick back up when the NBA comes around just because that's like nightly. Sometimes if football is easy, the weekly stuff, but nightly I like to just throw something in a few minutes before or tip, get a little action in. But I don't know, I follow the NBA closest of anything, so definitely feel more informed about the NBA and like to get some bets in.
Yeah, I think if you're casually betting the NBA, it's probably the hardest sport to bet. But if you're betting it every night and you're really
Yeah.
paying attention to kind of the swings that teams go in and out of, you can really, I think, get a lot of value out of all the sports that I bet. I think I've lost the least amount of money on the NBA.
That's how you judge it.
So
What's the lowest amount of loss on a sport? So,
yeah, I don't know if I'm up on the NBA, but it's definitely the best out of the three or four sports that I've done. All right, so we're gonna do a gimmick to get through the league and give our preseason takes um, of every team in the league. I think I think it's a good way to do it. And so what we've done is we've taken the entire league and randomized it into a list. And we're going to go roster by roster who we would take in the head-to-head matchup. The first team in the list versus the second team in the list. We'll take the winner there and then match that up against the third team in the list until we get all the way through. So this might take a while, but I think it'll give us a good opportunity to chat about everything. And so that's going to be our format today, and we'll see if it works. And so the first team that we have on our list, we'll just jump right into it, is the Atlanta Hawks. And so the opening day roster for the Atlanta Hawks looks like it's going to be Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, DeAndre Hunter, Saddiq Bey, and Clint Capella, with notable guys off the bench such as Patty Mills, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Onyeka Young. Oh man,
yeah, I'll give
talking
you a pass on that one.
on. Uh,
Onyeka Okongwu, I think, is how he prefers.
yeah, I'm not in mid-season form with the pronunciations.
You
So
need to get a Mike Breen call in before you can fully get the pronunciations.
yeah, you have to have someone lead the way, and you just trust them. And then Jalen Johnson and AJ Griffin. Um, Jacob, what's your opinion of that roster as it's currently constructed? Uh, I guess we
Yeah,
can't really talk about too much potential trades in the head-to-head matchup part, but feel free to, if you think that there might be some
sprinkle it in.
movement, yeah, go ahead and throw it in here at the top.
I mean, I really like. I've liked the Hawks roster the last couple of years. I mean, they got rid of John Collins, which is a guy that had kind of like bogged them down. I feel like in the past couple of years, just offensively, and so I really do like. I like their roster. I think Trae Young with Quinn Snyder coming in as their coach. They finished pretty strong last year, and I don't know if you remember. They played the Celtics pretty well in the first round. I think you know, I think another a full off season under their belt. guy like Jalen Johnson definitely sticks out to me as somebody that maybe he ends up being a starter in that group. So I think it's a pretty strong roster. I think that they're going to be able to. They've got some sneaky depth there, and I think they're going to be able to. I think they'll have a. I think they're going to be a solid top 6 playoff team, honestly, in the East. Like to me, like maybe they're in that 7-8 play in, but I think that in my opinion, I think they're going to bounce back. They'll probably I think they're 42.5 over under. They were the 8th seed last year, maybe 9th seed. I'll pull that up, but yeah, I think
they were the not
ninth. Yeah, they were the 9th seed. So I think I definitely think they're going to finish stronger than they did last year. They went 41-41. So right at that.
What's their over under? I don't have that pulled up.
42.5 is what they are this year. So I think that's a pretty easy. I mean, I think with a full season of Quinn Snyder, I think that's an easy over.
That's my big decider there is Quinn Snyder seems to be a good coach. Yeah, I think it's a little too soon for him to have lost the locker room already, which is something this day and age in the NBA I'm always worried about is what's the staying power of any coach. But correct me if I'm wrong, last year they were in the play-in. They beat the Heat.
They actually beat the Heat in that first game to be able to get the 8th seed. Yeah. In that first playing game. The conference final Heat that almost lost the first 2 playing games.
Wait, so was that the 7-8 then? Yeah, that would have been
the 7-8.
Yeah,
the 7-8. Yeah. So they were the 8th seed and Miami was the 7, and then they ended up getting the 7 seed because of the playing game.
Yeah. And I remember watching that game, and the Hawks were out of that game until about 6 minutes left. And they just got hot. And that's one thing that you always have with Trae Young. I don't know if they're going to have a ton of regular season success as far as like an outlier from, what they're kind of on trajectory for. I think the roster's fine. I think that it's nice to have Mills and Bogdanovich coming off of the bench. I think that those are 2 like veteran guys that are going to give you a full 48 minutes of guys that don't completely suck out on the court, which is what you mainly want. Can Clint Capella stay healthy? I'll believe it when I see it. The guy that I messed his name up, that's your backup line. So it's like, I like your backcourt backups. Not too sure about the front court depth. And not too, I'm not in love with Sadiq Bey, Clint Capella. If that's my front line, I'm not sure if I'm making a real deep run in the playoffs. I'm not sure if I'm jumping up and grabbing a top 4 seed. So I don't think it's the worst roster in the East. I don't think it's close to the worst roster in the East. I think that they have some top talent and, some initial depth. We'll see how it holds up over the season. But I expect them to be in the play-in if they're going to be getting themselves into the postseason.
Yeah, and they're going to go as far as Trae Young. Like if Trae Young buys in, and I know he puts up the numbers, but if he buys in with Snyder and actually gets the rest of the team involved, and Murray has a kind of a bounce back from his season last year, I think they've got 2 to 3 like all-star caliber guys on the roster. So whenever you have that, I feel like you're night to night. If you can get those depth pieces that, like you said, don't suck, which is huge in the NBA, a night to night with the guys that sit out and get injured in just a long season. And, I think, like you said, probably in that play in to like 5 to 6 range, which may be only a couple of games separating it anyway.
Who was their coach before Quinn Snyder? Nate McMillan.
McMillan, yeah.
Man, I remember watching an end of game sequence last year where they ended up getting like back-to-back 5-second calls down like 2 points. And I'd never seen that happen, like not get the ball in at the end of the game twice. I think Quinn Snyder will be a big upgrade, having him for a full off season and all that. Okay, so we're okay on the Hawks. I wouldn't take their over, but I wouldn't take their under either, just because they're probably going to
stay away.
Yeah, I wouldn't put any money on them. I'm not locking anything in on the
No, first team can't like
yeah.
shoot those off too quick.
Yeah, all right. So we have our first competitor. The second team on the list is the Dallas Mavericks. Wow. Getting spicy right off the bat. Okay, let's bring up the Mavs roster here. And
It's a good matchup to start off.
these are obviously beginning of the season projections, but this team, who knows what's going to happen. But we've got Luka, Kyrie, Josh Green, Grant Williams, Derek Lively the second, Jaden Hardy coming off the bench with Tim Hardaway Jr., Olivier Maxence Prosper. Did I nail that or did I butcher it?
I think you did. He goes by Omax, so it's a lot easier.
Okay.
You can just call him that.
And then we got Maxi Kleber, obviously, and Dwight Powell off of the bench, rounding out the second unit. And they've also got Seth Curry and Dante Exum is back in the league.
He's back in the league, yeah.
Back in the league. I watched him play a little bit in Denver whenever I lived out there, and he was not very good, which is a shame. I was excited for him.
I was too.
Okay. Jacob, what's your take on the Mavs?
Take on the Mavs. This is a really tough one because I like what they did in the offseason. I think they are a better team than they were last year from a roster standpoint. I think Grant Williams is going to be really good for them. I think Lively has like some pop down low. Like I think he's going to be he's listed as the starter. I don't know if I feel like Dwight Powell always ends up starting for that team. So I don't know, but I think by the season's end, he will probably be their go-to guy there. And, when you have Luka and Kyrie up top, like if, everything with Kyrie is a caveat, but, I think their roster's better. I think it's deeper. I think they have more flexibility than they did, on the wing, which has plagued them last year once they traded away, Finney Smith. But my big question for them is I don't think Jason Kidd's that good of a coach. And I think there's always a problem. And you have Jason Kidd and Kyrie Irving. Yeah, when you have a coach like Kidd and then you have a player like Irving, I don't know. That to me is what – I think this is a good team, roster-wise. I just don't know that it's going to stay together all season.
Yeah, I was looking at the West last night, and I'm just not sure how far up the list the Mavs really go for me in the West. There's a lot of teams that I like better. There's a lot of duos that I like better. As you mentioned, there's a lot of coaches that I like better. The X factor for me on this roster is Seth Curry. I've watched Luka. I wouldn't watch Luka his rookie year and in person, and his step back three has always been his bread and butter since he got into the league. And he's a one-man show. And I was never a fan of the Luka Kyrie mixture. I think statistically they do pretty well, although their record wasn't that great whenever they played together. If you can add an actual firepower, piece like Seth Curry off the bench, and he can shoot it. I think that he can shoot it. I'm a Seth Curry fan. I've seen him do it, which is a big thing. It's hard to find elite shooting, and I still think that he can be an elite shooter in the league. I'm not a big Grant Williams fan, just personality wise. You mentioned putting together Kyrie and Jason Kidd. I think you add Grant Williams to that mix. That's not a team plane that I would want to fly on 41 times a year. It's not a group that I would want to hang out in the hotel room with, all the time. I can't imagine that Luka spends too much bonding time, outside of scheduled training hours with this team. I'm not sure that there's a whole lot of bonding going on. I've always thought that since Kyrie got traded to the Mavs, because people were like, "Oh, well, all the players love Kyrie," and it's like, yeah, but Luka's from Slovenia, like
Yeah.
culturally, Kyrie means a lot to the NBA community, but like Luka Doncic doesn't care about who Kyrie Irving is as like a cultural figure. And so yeah, I'm not very high on this team. Do you have the over under handy on them?
Yeah, I had them. They are 43.5. So a game over the Hawks. I mean, that's the thing that you mentioned it too, like out west, you can like it on paper or like you don't like it, but I can like it on paper. Like, oh, I think there's some pieces there. But when you go team by team through the West, it's really tough to see them not in that play-in mix like they were last year. I think that's probably their ceiling.
Agreed.
You know, I
Yeah.
don't think that it's going to be like you said the continuity season long. I think they're bound for roster turnover, head coach turnover, which is going to throw a wrench in everything. If that happens. So I definitely don't feel confident about them being like a solid playoff team or reaching that mid 40s. I think you're going to see those kind of play-in teams be right around the 500 anyway, because I think the top teams are going to be a little bit better.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of the roster. Just whenever I stack it up, as we'll probably get through here, whenever I look at it against everyone else in the West, there are just teams above them that I haven't seen a reason to put them up above.
No.
And everyone said that it was crazy last year that the Mavs could miss the playoffs. It's like not only did the Mavs miss the playoffs, they missed the play-in tournament, and they
Yeah.
missed the play-in tournament by 4 games. It
Yeah.
wasn't even close. I remember watching the Sunday afternoon game whenever they played the Hornets on the road, and it was like, all right, because I think they had just lost to the Thunder or something, and then they went and played the Hornets, and it was like, okay, well, this is a game they have to have, or they're pretty much eliminated, but they'll definitely win because it's the Hornets, and there's 2 weeks left in the season, and they blew it. They got smoked, and it's a bad team. Like it's whether it's the talent or it's the coaching, it's the scheme. Like they do not put it together when it matters, and I think it
No, that's a
all
big
comes
thing.
down to chemistry and the way that that team is assembled from not just a basketball standpoint, because I think Luka is a savant on the court. Might be a little high, but I mean he's a top talent in the league. And so yeah, I don't like the way that this team has been constructed for a couple of years now, and to see them do it last year, to see them just miss the play-in tournament. I've seen it now. I can't unsee it. You can't take that back. And
Yeah.
so I would not touch the over on this team. I would not bet on them to make the playoffs. I would probably bet against them to make the playoffs, because even if they do make it into the play-in tournament, I just don't trust that team down the stretch. Whenever your go-to option is one guy, and he's gonna be the creator, and it's gonna go through him, that's tough in a one-game series. It's tough in a one-game series.
Yeah.
Like you better hope that he's on. I'd much rather see that in a 7-game series. And so if they're not a top 6 seed and he's got to go through the play-in tournament, I just don't love it.
Yeah, and we don't
So
know at that point if Kyrie is even going to be playing, right? Like that's the other thing is that if you like looking at this from a gambling perspective, trends over time, like you just can't rely on him. So, I
yeah,
mean, you can't take it as its current. You can't, their second best player, even though with all his faults, you don't even know that he's going to be there for the majority of the season or at the end of the season. So it's a pretty easy,
right. Or
like,
if
stay away.
he's there physically, is he there mentally?
Right.
Is he interested in the good of the team? And you combine that again with just the annoyance of Grant Williams. I feel for Luca. I would like to, give me an over under on Luka's weigh-in between now and the end of the season
Yeah.
because he might just have to eat himself to death just to find some comfort in that locker room. So, all right, here's the moment we've all been waiting for. Let's match these teams up. Who would you take? Are we doing a one game? Are we doing a one game head to head? Are we doing a best of
Yeah.
three? Okay, just head to
I think we got
head.
to do one game because, like, especially with these play-in teams, kind of, like I think we can add context if needed, but we'll do 1-1.
Okay. Yeah, these teams are definitely not getting to the 7-game series part of the season, in my opinion. Okay. I am going to take the Mavericks in this matchup.
What a turn!
In that one game, Luka could be awesome. And I would bet more money on Luka being awesome for one game than Trae Young being awesome for one game. And that's just what it comes down to, in a crunch time game where things matter and we're playing our best players and we're running our best plays and we're being as efficient as possible. I think that Luka's ceiling on being efficient is way higher than Trae's his ceiling on being efficient, and this is funny that our first matchup is Luka versus Trae, like the ultimate debate of who could get it done.
Like the Hawks chose him over.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm taking Luka and the Mavs, and we'll see if Kyrie's makes it to the game. But either way, I'm fine with plugging in Tim Hardaway Jr. and Seth Curry for shooting guard if I have to, and I would probably still take the Mavs. And if we're doing this at the beginning of the season, Grant Williams hasn't annoyed everyone yet. And so
key factor.
He is he has played in big games, maybe not great in those big games, but he has played in them. And I can't say the same for Sadiq Bey. And so
that is true.
So I'm gonna go with the Mavs here.
Yeah, and I mean, I was actually leaning that way. We can take the Mavs to move on in this, theoretical bracket, but I definitely think that the Hawks could potentially, in my head, have a higher ceiling than them if we're playing this one game playoff at the end, towards the end of the season. I think the continuity wise, coaching advantage, like you said, running your best plays, being most efficient at the end of a game. You still have Jason Kidd on the bench that could throw a wrench in a lot of things. And he has.
Yeah, I'm hoping that we're up like 14. With like 8 minutes left.
Take it out of his hands, so he can't throw anything on the court. But
right.
I love that move. Yeah, that was probably the most respected I've ever had for him. So, as a coach, but it's fun. I think there's an argument here, but I think the best player, it comes down to it in the NBA. It's a lot of times it's about who has the best player, right? Unfortunately, but like just sometimes it's as cut and dry as that. And I think Luka is by far the best player in that matchup.
Yeah. So we're both going with the Mavs.
Take the Mavs.
Taking the Mavs, despite Jason Kidd. He would be excited to hear that. I hope he listens to this. I hope he
probably won't, but
that's pessimist, Jake. He might listen to it. This could go viral.
Good.
Okay. So the Atlanta Hawks are out. All right, at this pace, this is going to be a couple of parters. But anyway, let's just keep going. This is fun. So the next team on the list is the Indiana Pacers. We're starting off nice and slow and low with a nice little simmer here. We're not jumping into the best teams right off the bat, which is probably good. We'll do a slow burn. Okay, so the current roster for the Pacers looks like Tyrese Halliburton, Benedict Mathurin, Bruce Brown, Obi Toppin, and self-proclaimed top 5 center in the league, Miles Turner. Coming off the bench, we've got just an absolute dog. TJ McConnell, Andrew Nembhard, Buddy Hield, Jarris Walker, Jalen Smith, and Isaiah Jackson is another name that people might be familiar with. Daniel Tice at the end of the bench. I'm a big Halliburton fan. I'll
He's
just throw it
solid,
out
yeah.
there. He's real long. He's real lanky. He reminds me of Sean Livingston a little bit. That might be a little blasphemous, but a little bit of Sean Livingston with a little bit more range, but not nearly as good of a mid-range jumper as we all know. Sean Livingston has the most consistent shot of all time from 17 feet. So I love Halliburton. I thought that the Pacers were pretty good last year. Their record was, let me stall, 35-47. They did deal with some injuries through the middle of the season that really set them off track. I think that they were sitting around the play-in maybe like a quarter or a third of the way through the season, and then lost pace with the Raptors and the rest of the group. But I think that Mathurin is good. I think he's solid. I think that he's going to show some improvement, you hope. I haven't sold all of my Obi Toppin stock. I think that Obi's athletic, and if you're not having to run the entire offense through him, I think that he's a fine option to just kind of be free roaming, and hopefully he can, use his extra energy on the defensive end. And Miles Turner's the top 5 center in the league apparently. So I mean, what's not to like here?
By his own
TJ,
admission, yeah.
by his own admit, and he is his toughest critic, I'm assuming. And so if he's saying it, then I mean, you gotta believe it. Why would he just say something that's not true? So I think it would be disrespectful to Mr. Turner if we didn't have a lot of admiration for this incredible roster. And I'll be honest, I have placed bets solely on the fact of whether or not TJ McConnell is playing in a basketball game. And it works.
And it works.
And it works.
It does.
TJ McConnell is probably what we think Alex Caruso is. Like, yes. TJ McConnell is one of the scrappiest, not to use, a stereotypical term for a white NBA player, but one of the scrappiest players in the league. Like, he pisses people off with the way that he goes at people, to almost a Pat Bev level, as if you're talking about physical intensity and relentlessness on just trying to get the ball. And so I like the Pacers. I think that this is a pretty well-constructed team. I don't think that they're going to do a ton in the East, but for where they were last year, if they can stay healthy and get some good shooting out of Buddy Hield, we'll see if he sticks around, kind of as this team goes along in the season. They might end up, if they're not looking like they're where they're going to be, where they want to be at the end of the season, I could see them moving off a couple of pieces. I think Buddy Hield's name has already been floated around a little bit already. And so I like them as currently constructed. I think that they would be competitive in the East for a play-in spot this year.
I agree. I think they would have been last year if Halliburton didn't miss like 25 plus games with the injury.
Yeah,
and then they also yeah, exactly. Yeah, you also think too, like they kind of started slowing it down, like kind of throttling it back towards the end of the season to get a better pick when they knew they weren't going to make the play in. But Halliburton, Team USA guy, looks to be kind of a budding superstar. Top 5 center, as you said, can't discount that. Bruce Brown, NBA champion last year, going to play a lot of minutes for them. I think he's a positive add. And, this is a team like Rick Carlisle is a factor here. I hate to keep bringing up the coaches, but I do think in the NBA it's so key. Oh yeah, and he's a winner. He's a winner. He is going to do if he's not getting instruction from the owner to lose games, he is going to do everything humanly possible to win every possible game that he's coaching in. So I like that factor for them. That he's coached for a long time. He's he's going to get the best out of those guys like Top and guys who haven't been as successful at other places. He's probably going to use them correctly. We'll see if he lets any of the other fun young guys play. I like Aaron Nesmith. I like Nimhard. I like a couple other guys, like you said. So I think this is a good, fun, to use a Bill Simmons term, frisky team out east. So,
Spicy.
they're spicy. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
they're intriguing, and they could easily be like, if you were to say like, are they, I think like we said, the Hawks were 42.5 over under. The Pacers are 38.5. So that's a 4-game difference. Are you telling me they're that much better than the Pacers? I don't really think so.
And
So
if you think that they're healthy this year, that's only 3.5 wins more than they had last year.
exactly, which they would have easily got that last year if Halliburton played. So I think they're a solid, like you said, they're kind of in that same range with the Hawks, with that, like, maybe 5 to 6 seed ceiling if everything clicks. Maybe they offload Buddy Hield and the locker room improves or something like that.
You're
So
just
that's a ceiling.
okay. Okay.
It's a ceiling. That's a ceiling.
You're saying everyone takes a step, everything
Yeah.
gels a little bit more, guys play above what we've seen from them in new situations. And
Yes.
okay. Okay.
It's a ceiling. It's a ceiling projection, but they're more in that like 10, that 6 to 10 range. But
Right.
um, but
But
there's some other
41
teams later on that
wins.
I think could drop.
Yeah, 41 wins was the last play-in spot in the East, and 42 wins in the West. So if you think
They're
that
right around there.
yeah, if you think that they're getting in the play-in, if you think that they're frisky enough for a 10 seed, then yeah, that would mean that they most likely hit the over. Okay, moment of truth. Who are we taking? Mavs versus Pacers in a 1-game playoff as currently constructed with your current coaches.
You want to talk about a game that Rick Carlisle is going to want to win? It's going to be against the
Oh,
Mavs and Luka Doncic.
this is why we bring you on.
My initial take would be to kind of the same reasons I would take Dallas against Atlanta. But I don't. That's tough. I think I might be intrigued a little bit more by the Pacers in that type of game. I think their roster may be a little bit deeper, a little bit more well constructed from like how they're going to play together, the different lineups and the different rotations. So I'm not married to it, but I could see the Pacers taking that.
All right. We've got one vote for the Pacers. This is tough because it really comes down to Kyrie for me.
Yeah.
Is Kyrie going to be available in this game? And 1-game playoff, I like the Pacers as well.
Yeah.
I think that there's more options. I think that there's more paths to victory for them. If the Mavs are going to win, we all know what it's going to look like. There are a couple of different ways that the Pacers could win.
Exactly.
And I'm guessing this is going to be on a neutral court, but I'm sure Pacers fans travel a little bit better than Mavs fans.
We could put this in the context of the play-in or the in-season tournament where everybody's in Vegas for the second round. So
okay, yeah, that's good. That's good. Well,
yeah,
this is the preseason tournament instead of
this
the
is the
in-season.
preseason. It's in the Sphere in Vegas. I think taking the Pacers.
Well, now we have a name for this episode. The preseason tournament is what this is.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm taking the Pacers as well. I think that I have more faith in the coaching as you mentioned.
Yeah.
I think that Rick Carlisle is definitely an improvement over Jason Kidd. Unless your name's Luka and you want to run that kind of offense, but that kind of offense I'm not a big fan of. All right. So we both have the Pacers moving on through game 2. The Hawks and the Dallas Mavericks have been eliminated. Next up on the list, one of the most talked about teams of the offseason, who ended up not doing anything for the most part, the Miami Heat. The Miami Heat. Let's pull up their roster real quick. should look pretty familiar to everybody. Not a whole lot of changes that I can think of. We have, this is not how you want to lead your team, in my opinion, going into the 2023-2024 season. We have Kyle Lowry at starting point guard with Tyler Hero, Josh Richardson, Jimmy Butler, and Bam Adebayo. Coming off the bench, we have Kevin Love, Thomas Bryant, Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin, Haywood Highsmith, RJ Hampton's still on a roster, Nikola Jovic, and Yami Yaquez Jr. is also on the team.
UCLA great.
Yeah, legend, a Cali legend.
Yes.
Yeah, Orlando Robinson and Drew Smith also on the team. This is a roster, now that I'm looking at it, not crazy about the roster first glance, but there are a lot of names that I recognize.
Right.
I recognize pretty much everybody on this team, which is rare these days in the NBA to go 13 deep and kind of know everybody. As shown by my initial reaction, Kyle Lowry is your starting point guard. I'm not a fan of it. I don't see how, if that's what you're bringing to the table, I don't see how he's leading you to a top 3 seed this year. He's old, he's slow, he's always been undersized, and last year there were moments where they couldn't count on him in the playoffs and in the regular season. I mean, he had a horrible regular season and looked washed up at the beginning of last year. You're adding another 12 months, another deep playoff run, another finals run to that. As much as I like Jimmy, he's not really known for playing great this time of year. I've never been a Bam Adebayo fan. I don't know what he brings to the offensive end of the floor. I watch him multiple times and just am appalled at his playmaking skills. Every now and then he'll do something nice, but just running your offense through Bam, I just don't see it. I don't trust Jimmy in a situation that doesn't have super duper high stakes, and the preseason tournament is not one of those high stakes situations. And I'm not taking Kyle Lowry. And as much as I recognize everyone on this team, I don't know that I want any of these players on my roster other than the top 2. And so yeah. I'm pretty low on the Heat this year. They have great coaching, obviously, but at some point there's going to be a talent deficiency with them and the rest of the top of the East.
Yeah. I've gone back and forth on them since the fallout of the Dame trade. I thought they kind of missed the boat there. And they should have just, I mean, maybe the deal was out of their hands, right? Like maybe they couldn't make it happen. But this is a team that's going to be involved in any kind of in-season trades. Obviously, I mean, like you said, Kyle Lowry was so like he was thrown in anything. His contract, all last season, Hero missed the playoff run. He looks good. I mean, he dropped 31 on the Grizzlies in preseason the other day. You're going to get some good. He's more of a regular season player, at least stat stuffer than really anybody on the roster. And they're going to be a tough night to night team. They're going to get something out of these into the roster guys, into the bench guys. They've had a lot of postseason success recently, so it's hard to take that out of what you evaluate in the kind of their outlook for the season. I think they're I think they're a playoff team, but I don't love the depth that they have until we see these like into the bench guys actually play and do something and Spoelstra get it out of them. He probably will, but until we do it, it's still tough to feel confident about it. Kevin Love, I don't really have any faith that he's going to be that much of a factor for a full season if he's even available for that much.
Yeah.
But I mean, like you said, you have Butler, you have Bam, you have Eric Spoelstra. I think they're going to, I mean, they literally almost missed the playoffs last year. We talked about that.
Yeah,
Like they were by the Bulls. They almost got knocked out by the Bulls, who are
Yeah,
not good.
they were down
So
4 points with just a couple of minutes left in that game.
I could totally see this season playing out similar to that, very similar to that, where they're in that play-in again, with how much the top few teams in the East have improved. So it's weird. Like if we're talking about a playoff matchup, I think they're going to be ready to go. But I don't feel that great about them. I think they're going to be in that 7 to 8, kind of 9 range for the season, and we'll see. But I mean, it's a different context when we talk about a 1-game matchup. So
yeah, I think looking at the season that they're going to be in the play-in. I don't know if they would make it out of the play-in this year. You know, you think about the standout performances that they happen to catch from guys that you weren't expecting it from last year. They've obviously moved off of Gabe Vincent. You're bringing in I like Thomas Bryant. I liked him when he was on the Lakers. I think that he's a pretty talented guy. I think that he's a stable force there. But yeah, I'm just not trusting Butler and Adebayo during the regular season to be studs. And if your backcourt looks like Kyle Lowry and Tyler Hero, then I'm not seeing where you're getting consistent, outstanding performances night to night. Like someone, I don't know, I can't look up and down this roster and go, oh yeah, that guy can give you 20 something to not, like, multiple times a month. I'm not seeing that many guys on this roster. So let's get to that head-to-head matchup between the Heat and the Pacers. Jacob, who you got?
Probably going to take the Heat, honestly. Just even though I really like the Pacers, if they're playing 1 game against, I mean, it is the preseason tournament, so I guess we have to take that into account here. But I still think, from a coaching standpoint, it's a good coaching matchup, but I still think Spoelstra is the best probably in the league. And I do think that there could be some strategical things they could do to try to limit Halliburton's impact on the game, from his distribution and stuff like that. And you got Jimmy on the squad. So I think it's really a toss up at this point. Over the course, I could see Indiana being a higher seed than them headed into the playoffs, but I probably take Miami, honestly. 1 game.
I will see your Bam Adebayo and raise you a top 5 center in Miles Turner. And I
didn't factor that in. I forgot.
I will see your scrappiness of Jimmy Butler, and I will raise you TJ McConnell. In 1 game, especially in a preseason tournament, I'm taking the Pacers. I think that if both of those teams were healthy last year, I think that I would have taken the Pacers at the beginning of the season. Yeah. And I think that I would definitely do it this year. Another year of mileage on Kyle Lowry, another year of Jimmy Butler acting like he's done something in this league, although he's never won anything other than a conference tournament. I'm sticking with the Pacers. Do you have their over-under, the Heat's over-under?
The Heat's over-under. That's a good question. It is where'd they go?
I bet it's way too high.
45.5, which feels rich for what we've been talking about. I would probably lean under.
45.5?
They didn't even win that last year.
Yeah, they won 44 last year.
Yeah, that's a steep. I mean, you make the finals. I mean, I understand it. You're not going to give them at 41 or 42 and for somebody that made the finals last year. So, but I don't feel good about that number season long. Unless they were to, trade for Donovan Mitchell or something. I don't know.
Yeah. I just don't think that the Heat care anything about winning 45 games. No. Their Heat culture thinks that they can win a game in the play-in tournament. I don't think they care anything.
One thing we didn't talk about is Udonis Haslem's no longer there. So Heat culture, does it die with him?
Yeah. Is this Spoelstra Haslam thing going to turn into Brady Belichick? Can Spoelstra win without Udonis Haslem? We've yet to see it.
We haven't seen it.
I've never seen a
Never seen it.
Spoelstra team win without Udonis Haslem. He's the glue guy. That's a great point.
Yeah.
All right, I'm sticking with the Pacers. We're rolling with the
Love it.
Pacers. I didn't see that happening, but we're doing it. And that's real, as you were saying, it's rich. That's real steep. 45.5 wins for the Heat.
They're definitely not 7 games better than the Pacers, which is the difference in the over-under. So there's definitely not 7 games better than the Pacers season long.
Yeah. Okay. Next on the list, number 5. Wow, these are some good matchups. Number 5, the Orlando Magic. Okay. Let's get the Heat off my screen. Let's bring up the Magic. Okay. The preseason roster for the Magic looks like Markelle Fultz, Jalen Suggs, Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr. Coming off the bench, we have Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, Joe Ingles, Jonathan Isaac, Moritz Wagner, Anthony Black, Jett Howard, Goga Bitted, but yeah, next. And then Chuma Okeke. I know that one. And my favorite name in all of the NBA, Trevelin Queen.
Yes. Can't forget about him.
My little Trevelin Queen. This is a good roster. This is a good team. This is one of my favorite teams last year. One of my favorite League Pass teams. They've just got so many different options. They've got so many guys that can handle the ball. Not saying that they should. Right. Looking at you, Jalen Suggs. What a perfectly named player, Jalen Suggs. I agree.
Should have played quarterback.
He completely sucks in my eyes. I would rather you run Cole Anthony out there, but I understand for different lineups and all that. Jalen Suggs to me is the weak link of this roster. I like everybody else. I expect the Magic to have a pretty good year. I think if Fultz can show even the slightest bit of improvement off of what he did last year and become even just a little bit more reliable, whenever he's a little bit more respected with the ball in his hand now, but he still has plenty of open opportunities where he seems a little hesitant sometimes. And so if you can see another bit of improvement there, I expect the Magic to be pretty good this season and to contend for maybe hosting a play-in game. If everything goes well and Paulo takes a big leap, you could see them maybe as a 5 or 6 seed, I think, in the East. They've got depth. They're young on their starters, but you're bringing in Joe Ingles, you're bringing in Gary Harris. You've got guys who have been in winning situations before. Cole Anthony, I know that he's not a veteran, but he has been in the league for a while. He's probably one of the better backup point guards in the league. And so I like the way that this team is constructed for how young they are. And you bring in Jett Howard and Anthony Black, who I think especially Anthony Black could be something. I haven't watched him in the preseason, but I think that that's not a bad addition to a young roster, and see how he fits in, because he's not going to have any real responsibility, because even whenever he's running with the second team, you've got those veterans that I mentioned to kind of lead the way out there.
Yeah, no, they definitely have a deep roster. They're kind of everybody's favorite team to take everybody's favorite team to take a leap. I like the Razorback Anthony Black. I think he's going to be able to make an impact from day one, just from being like malleable and being able to distribute, play defense. He's going to be useful. I wonder about Paolo and like Franz, if they're, Franz is third year, I think, and then Paolo's second. I think they'll take leaps. I think they're really good players. They both played internationally this summer. I wonder if it's going to be a big enough impact for them to really kind of reach their ceiling for this team, to reach the Magic ceiling. But like you said, I mean, when Jalen Suggs is your weak link, I think he can. It's not a bad weak link, right? He can play some defense. He's an athletic guy. He's a high pedigree. Gonzaga and playing in the NCAA tournament. So it's not the worst weak link in the world, right?
No,
but
I just don't think I don't think he was. Yeah, I just never thought he was deserving of a top 5 pick.
No, it was kind of a weaker draft that year, but I definitely like their over under is 37.5, which is right around these kind of East teams that you kind of don't really know. I definitely like the Pacers better than them, but not spoiler alert, Pacers better than them. But I'm interested to see the steps that Paolo and Franz take. I think that's really going to be what dictates their ceiling outcome this season. So, but they're deep enough to knock off these midweek games that non-national TV games. Like you're going to look up and 2 months into the season, you're going to be like, I haven't watched a lot of fans are going to look up and say, I haven't watched a single Magic game, but they're in like 4th place in the East. What the hell? So It's like, that's what's going to happen. Whether they stay there or not, kind of like the Jazz or the Pacers early of last year, surprise teams. I think they're definitely going to be a surprise team. They're going to be a tough night to night team to play against. I think they're once again another one of those East teams that just fall into that lot of like kind of that 6 to 10 range.
Yeah. They had 34 wins last year. 34 and 48. They lost their last 4. They kind of mailed it in there towards the end.
Yeah.
I think this year they're playing for a play-in spot. I think that if they don't make it to a play-in, that they would see that internally as a failed season. At the 37.5, I think that I would bet on the over. Not saying that they're going to get to 40 wins, but you don't have to get to 40 wins. You could end up 38 and 44, and you're still winning that bet. So I think that they're going to make plenty of leaps, and like you said, they're going to play a lot of sleepy games that nobody's watching, that nobody cares about, and also starting this year, games that are more likely to miss other stars.
Yeah.
You can, teams are
you can count on the Magic.
Yeah. Teams are going to actually have to play their stars during nationally televised games. So these regional games, you are going to see, these top heavy rosters sometimes, this is when they're going to choose to sit their starters. And so I'd take the over there. But let's get to the head-to-head matchup. Jacob, you've got Heat versus Magic.
Heat versus Magic. Oh, man.
Heat versus Magic. Who are you taking?
I took the Heat over the Pacers.
Took the Heat over the Pacers, knocked them out.
Yeah, now I'm not feeling good about my Heat take. But
by Halliburton.
I'd probably... I don't know. I don't want to be the guy that zags on the fun Orlando Magic team that's going to play at like 2 Pacific time every week. I get to watch them before the workday's even over. Mm-hmm. But I probably would still stick with the Heat. I know it's boring. But like I said, I really want to see, like, I want to see something. I mean, I may change my pick in 2 weeks, if that's allowed in the rules of the game, but
it's not, but you can say it's that
not,
now.
But you can say that now. I think I'd probably take the Heat, but I'm not feeling confident about it. Weirdly, sometimes even looking against the Pacers, I think the Pacers are a better team, but some of these matchups with Orlando, I feel like they could throw some stuff at Halliburton and give they don't give the top 5 center a run for his money.
Yeah, that's right. So you're moving the Heat along.
Moving the Heat along.
The Heatles tour continues for Jake. This is tough. this is a game that I would want to watch.
Yes.
I would really be interested to see how Obi matches up with Paulo, what he's able to do whenever you're running Paulo through the point forward kind of position. See if they're able to get top 5 center Miles Turner away from the basket. This is tough, mainly because I like both of these benches, and I really like the Magic bench. You got Mo Wagner, you got Joe Ingles, Gary Harris, Cole Anthony. That's a deep second unit to run out there. If you're telling me that I'm getting anything from Anthony Black, I just feel like there are minutes that the Magic could win there that I'm not sure. As much as I love TJ McConnell, these are some veterans. These are guys that are not going to be intimidated by TJ McConnell. When I first saw the Magic, I thought I was going to move the Pacers along, but I'm not. I'm going with the Magic. I think that Paulo takes a leap this year. I like Franz Wagner. I don't think he's as great as some people think that he is. I know he's like a top 30 player in the NBA now, according to some lists or something like that, which is a little insane. But I like them in one game. I know that Paulo can get the ball below the free throw line in a one game series. I just like not having to rely on outside shooting. And I have Markelle Fultz, so obviously I don't want to have to do that. I'm going to take the Magic. I'm as surprised as anybody, but I'm going to take the Magic. So
yeah, I don't
Jake's still riding with the Heat. I've got the Magic. Moving on to our 5th matchup. And the next team on our list in the preseason tournament, this will be fun to talk about. Both of our hometown teams, your Memphis Grizzlies.
Here we go.
Wow. By the way, this is the first time we don't know who's next on the list. So this is as exciting for us as it is for our one listener, whoever you may be. Okay, so the Grizzlies. Let's bring up their roster. We obviously know that Ja is out for the first 25 games of the season. He is still on the team as of today.
Don't scare me.
Dude, I know. I'd like to just go on the record. This is a pro Ja Morant podcast.
It is.
In all forms and fashions. I may go on a rant here in a minute, but let's just get through the roster first. See, on the depth chart, they don't even have Ja on the depth chart. That's crazy. All right.
Should we evaluate them with Ja as from a roster standpoint? Should we evaluate them?
That's interesting. Is Ja suspended for the preseason tournament?
Exactly. I mean, we kind of make our rules here, but I
think we put Ja in because this isn't the preseason and this isn't the regular season. This is the preseason tournament. It's different. It's its own standalone thing. He's not injured. So I think for the point of our evaluation that we should put Ja in.
For the listeners' sake, yeah.
Yeah, and also just it's more fun if Ja's a part of things. So we have Ja, and then we have I guess that would move. It's interesting. I wonder what they're gonna do there. All right, we have Marcus Smart, Desmond Bane, John Conchar, JJJ, Steven Adams. That's your first unit, depending on Marcus Smart in or out. Then we have off the bench, Derrick Rose, sharpshooter Luke Kennard, big body David Roddy, Santi Aldama, Xavier Tillman, Zaire Williams, Kenny Lofton Jr. Where's the isn't Laravia supposed to be on here?
He's bouncing around.
Is he on a G League roster right now?
No, they don't have him very high. He's small forward, power forward, 3-4.
Well, anyway, that's the roster. I think that I think it's one of the better rosters in the league. I think especially whenever you plug Ja back in. I think that the Grizz are going to miss Dillon Brooks more than they think that they will.
Oh, potentially.
Maybe just in the locker room, because I know that a lot of people had a problem with Dillon Brooks. I don't think that a lot of Grizzlies players had a huge problem with Dillon Brooks. I think that I came to, as much as I knew the flaws in his game, I liked having Dillon Brooks on that team. I thought that last year we needed a guy like Dillon Brooks on the team. Fortunately, once Dillon Brooks left, we got a guy that's probably a little bit better than Dillon Brooks in Marcus Smart. Yep. He's not as tall, but he is a physical presence out on the wing. He's not as versatile as Dillon Brooks. You're not going to see Marcus Smart guarding LeBron in the playoffs. But you do have a physical wing defender that you can pair with Ja, with Desmond Bane. It gives you a formidable backcourt. And as long as Steven Adams can stay healthy and Jaren Jackson can play his natural position, I think that that's one of the best front courts in the entire league, up until Steven Adams' fluke injury last year, diving out of bounds in a game that should have never even gotten to that point.
Exactly.
Against the Lakers. They were a top 3 front court in the NBA. If you're looking at rebounding numbers, if you're looking at impact at the rim defensively, you add a full season of Luke Kennard, who's statistically one of the best shooters in the NBA. And then there's going to be names that pop up that the national average fan isn't familiar with. I think that you're going to see a good amount of David Roddy on the second string during the regular season. I think you're going to see a good amount of Santi Aldama, maybe even not in crunch time, but in minutes that matter. Xavier Tillman has been for 2 seasons now a solid guy off the bench. You wonder if Zaire Williams is going to take a leap. I'm not going to count on it. It would be great to see. And then there's one person that's missing from this. Is Brandon Clark coming back, or is he not coming back?
They'll probably say he's potentially available to the end of the season, but I feel like with an Achilles, you pretty much just sign off the next 15 months for a basketball player. But I don't know, maybe not.
It says he won't be ready to play for the start of the season. So I think he'll be back at some point, hopefully this year, sometime during the season. It's just, again, it's a roster that doesn't have a lot of suck on it. Right. If there is a weak link on it, it's John Conchar, and I love Jitty. Jitty had my favorite play of the whole playoffs whenever he blocked Anthony Davis twice. I jumped around my apartment. I think that John Conchar is talented. Apparently, the Grizzlies think that John Conchar is talented. They kept him over other options. They moved people out and said, we're sticking with John Conchar. They signed him to an actual NBA contract last year. They have faith in him. I would like to see it materialize, because halfway through the season last year, you could hear the groans whenever it came to Conchar spotting up for 3. You'd love to see someone with Luke Kennard's shooting ability there starting in that position, but he is just a bit of a liability on defense. And if you're running Ja and Bane out there, you can't run Kennard. He's awful on defense. He gets lost. He gets turned around to where he is not sure who to guard. I mean, it's why the Clippers didn't play him. They just didn't play him at all. But we need the shooting, and I think that it'll be nice to have that option for the entire year and see how he fits in, see how he changes the defense, especially whenever Ja gets back. So I'm big on the Grizzlies. No shocker there.
No shocker. No shocker. It's hard, it's hard to not be biased, but I don't think this is, I mean, just to start out with the over under 45 and a half wins is an over under for this team. And we were talking about like the Heat at 44 or whatever. I mean, they're definitely an over. I think it's a great roster. We see that when Steven Adams is on the court, the team functions better. And something that I've had a problem with is like if Steven Adams has one injury basically his entire career, and it was last year, that just maybe slightly misdiagnosed. Maybe he just had a little bit more knee soreness and wanted to take care of it. The dude's basically played every game in his career up until that point in a season. Like he never misses games. And so I don't know why it's become like if Steven Adams can stay healthy, like of all the injuries that players have,
I heard
I
someone
feel
say,
pretty confident he's probably going to play 75 plus games. So,
and even if he doesn't
I
play 75, as a
yeah,
Grizzlies fan, you just hope that he's healthy for the playoffs because
exactly.
it totally changes how everyone else can play on that team.
Totally changes everything. And I think with Ja back on the team, I think you've got Smart and Bane in the starting lineup. And I think I think while you may miss Dillon Brooks a little bit here and there, I think Smart from a defensive standpoint is going to be fine with what Dillon Brooks provided, even a longer defender, more athletic. And offensively, I think there's a laundry list of people that offensively could provide the same value as Dillon Brooks. So even though I don't want to besmirch him on the way out. He was a valued player, did a lot of great things for us, but for Memphis. But I think it's tough to see this team not being right up there in the thick of it. I mean, back-to-back 2 seeds in the Western Conference with roster turnover, with young players that are still young. Desmond Bane, budding all-star season last year. He's going to get a lot of creation opportunities at the beginning of the year. I think that's going to be a guy that I would watch to really take a step. And then I think the wings, those, people like Zaire looking like he's going to have a better season. I mean, it's hard to have a worse season than last year. And then you've got Roddy and Laravia and Kennard. I think you just got more wing depth and more options to go to on a night-to-night basis than you've had in the past, to where you had to have a player like Dillon Brooks or even Conchar, to that matter, play a bigger role than maybe they needed to. And so now guys like Conchar can fit into the role that they're going to be the most successful at and provide that punch when you needed that defense, that rebounding. So like you said, shocker, definitely high on the Grizzlies. I think Jenkins, maybe he'll finally get his coach of the year respect this year. I mean, as Chris Vernon would say, I mean, back-to-back 50-win seasons, consistently winning without your best players, and you don't even get like top 3 in the voting. It's pretty incredible from the media. But Aldama looks ready for a breakout. We definitely have the optimistic take on it, but I think you go up and down and you've listed 10 to 12 players before you're talking about guys you're necessarily worried about, while having 2 to 3 all-star caliber players on the team. So I think that's the makings of a team that I could see number 1 in the West. Like I thought if we didn't have the Ja stuff at the kind of the final third of the season last year, I definitely think that 1 seed, people forget that it was like a 1 to 2 game separation there with Denver for the 1 seed until Steven Adams went out and the Ja stuff happened. So
yeah,
I think this is a team that could be the 1 seed.
Yeah. I don't know if they're going to be the 1 seed just because of the Ja suspension, but if you give me this full roster against any other team's full roster, I like their chances. And since we've been going through the depth charts here, this is the first team that I've seen multiple waves of a front court that's formidable all the way through. Yes. You have Jaren Jackson, you have Steven Adams, you have a 7-footer in Santi Aldama, you have Xavier Tillman, who's shown himself to be physical enough to guard Anthony Davis, LeBron James. You've got a mound in Kenny Lofton Jr. And you've got David Roddy, who's not the tallest guy, but he is thick, and you're not pushing him around.
Yeah.
And he's a versatile defender if you need him to switch off on ball action. And if you bring back Brandon Clark at some point throughout the season, that's the first team that we've gone through that's got 5, 6, 7 guys on the front court. I know that this is a wing-driven league these days, but you need that front court shored up. You have to have rebounding to make it in this league. and you have to be able to protect the rim, and you have to be able to deter people away from the easiest shots on the court. And
Totally
I think that this roster is well built to do that. All right.
Would agree. People like to shit on the front court the front court until it actually matters, and then you're like, what? They don't really have any depth there. So
Yeah.
I think front court depth through the course of a season, we've seen it. You protect the paint, you score in the paint, you're going to win a lot of games.
Unless you're the Warriors, you have to have multiple.
Maybe the
waves
best team of all
court.
time is a caveat.
Right. If you have the best outside perimeter scoring, in the league, then maybe you can get away with it. But that's one, maybe two teams a year. Everyone else, you better be able to shore up that front line. I would not put any money on the Grizzlies season total over just because of the Ja suspension. 45.5, that puts you at 5 wins less than last year. As things start to gel here, with who knows how Marcus Smart's going to run the offense, who knows what crunch time is going to look like. There's a chance that the Grizzlies don't have the best start to the season, and you don't really want to start in the hole whenever you've got to get to 46 wins. So I wouldn't put any money on it, but I also wouldn't bet against them because they have shown in the past that they can win without Ja, and they can scheme around it. And Taylor Jenkins is a good enough coach to win with multiple rosters. And so, All right. So now we've got our head-to-head matchups. Jake, you've got the Heat again versus the Grizzlies.
Yep.
Who are you taking in the preseason?
It's pretty easy for me. It's no surprise I'm going to take the Grizzlies in that matchup. I think it would be a fun game. I think, even without Ja Morant, I would probably lean Memphis, just given the depth and the options there and the bodies that you can throw at Jimmy Butler. So in this tournament that we're playing, Ja's available. So I think it's a pretty easy one for Memphis for me. I just think that it's going to be like, I'm a little bit more, I would probably lean over on them. I understand the stay away with the 25 games of like, kind of, you don't really know what they're going to look like, but I think they've built enough of a structure and foundation there to, even if they're just a couple of games over 500, which is, I think, probably best case scenario, I think they're set up to finish strong.
Yeah. Just the matchup of Desmond Bane, Marcus Smart, and Ja Morant versus Tyler Hero, Kyle Lowry, and I just know where I'm putting my money, and that's not even getting to the front court depth. All the bodies that you could throw at Bam. You could put length on him. You could lean on him with Steven Adams, like strongest dude in the NBA. So I agree with your pick there. I'm going to also take the Grizz over my head-to-head matchup with the Magic. For all the reasons that you just covered, they're just more seasoned. The Grizzlies have won elimination games before. They've been in the one-game tournament, and they've made it happen. As much as I feel confident about Paolo being able to get the ball to a decent place, I know what the Grizzlies offense is going to look like in that one game. I know what they can run. You add that to the possibility of Luke Kennard or Desmond Bane having a game where they go 7 for 8 from 3, 6 for 8 from 3. I just don't think that the Magic have the outside shooting or the front court depth. I think the Grizzlies probably walk away with that one.
Would agree.
All right. So we have our best roster that we've seen so far. Next up on the list, man, ChatGPT is just killing it with this list, honestly. We have the Los Angeles Lakers.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. We're just getting
I get a rematch. I get a rematch. We get a rematch in the next round right off the bat.
That's right. The Lakers roster currently constructed looks like D'Angelo Russell, Austin Reeves, LeBron James, Jared Vanderbilt, Anthony Davis, with Gabe Vincent coming off the bench, Taurean Prince, the stud from the opening round last year, Rui Hachimura, Christian Wood, And then we've got Cam Reddish as well, Jackson Hayes coming off the bench, Max Christie, Colin Castleton, never heard that one. And then Jalen Hood-Schifino, don't know that one either. Maybe I'm a little out of the loop. Oh, he's a rookie.
He's not going to factor in, so you're good.
Okay, good. And are we missing any big injuries for them, or is that the roster?
I think they're healthy going into the season. I think was surprising. I think they did sign Quindary Witherspoon yesterday. So former Mississippi State great. So I don't know if that factors in. Want to make sure.
Yeah, we might have to redo this whole thing now with that revelation. This just all comes down to health. LeBron James entering his 21st season, 22nd season, 21st. Is that right?
I think so. Yeah, I think 21st.
I think it's 21st, which is crazy.
Insane.
Been in the league for 3 more years than he's been out of the league in his lifetime. That's insane.
That's nuts.
But again, Anthony Davis, I don't know what I'm getting. I think that this is probably the hardest roster in the league to evaluate. Whenever you see who stood out last year, whenever it mattered, like, is Rui Hachimura now a guy that you can count on? Because he was for 3 weeks in April and May last year. He was a guy that you could count on pretty much every game. I mean, he single-handedly won game 1 against the Grizzlies. Which if Brandon Clark's not hurt, that doesn't happen. But we'll leave that alone. But we'll leave that alone. Who cares? And so you add that with Christian Wood, which who knows what Christian Wood's going to give you. Christian Wood might come out and be Rui Hachimura from last year. Or he could come out and be Christian Wood from last year, which is not what you want. D'Angelo Russell says that his inspiration in life is now who is his inspiration? Derek White. Yes. And Derek White does all the little things. D'Angelo Russell doesn't even get back on defense whenever he's the one shooting a 3 at the top of the key. Like, you don't even do the big things right, D'Lo. Like, I could not believe that he sat up there and said that with a straight face. He's notoriously one of the laziest defenders in the league, to come out and say that, it's all about the things that don't show up on the stat sheet and all the things that you have to do to win. I'll believe it when I see it, because for 9 years or however long this guy's been in the league, he's never shown me anything that shows that he cares about actually winning a game. He loves being in the spotlight in Los Angeles. I get it. And maybe being in the spotlight, he's realized that, I'm sure that he took a lot of crap after the Nuggets series last year, which he deserved. Maybe that spotlight is now bright enough that he is going to do all the little things, but I'm not putting any stock into it. And so I'm not very high on the Lakers for the regular season, just because there's so many variables that I have no idea how any of those things are going to play out. And yes, they have talent, but they have, all the way down to Cam Reddish, who knows? Jackson Hayes, who knows? Are these guys even going to be on a roster next year? These are guys that all of them seem to be getting their last chance in the league with a guy who's been in the league since the Carter administration. Yeah, since some of them were literally born. And so I'm just not – I could totally see the Lakers having a great season, but who knows? You run the season out 100 times, you probably get they probably run anywhere between the 4 seed and the 12 seed, depending on how that season, simulated out.
Yeah. No, I would agree with a lot of your breakdown there. I think they definitely improved the roster. I mean, they made a great trade. The trade they made last year before the playoffs really revitalized them. But you saw LeBron struggle a lot with injury last year. And I think, he's a pro's pro at figuring out his body and making sure that he was ready to go for the postseason. And he was exactly right. Him and AD had their, a top tier run through the playoffs. Before they got swept by the Nuggets. So can't forget that. But
They were close. There were some close games, but
there
they
were some close
got swept
games, and
by
the media
Nuggets.
loves to remind us that they was probably the most competitive sweep. But I definitely think they improved. I definitely think they have better bodies. Their two deep lineup that we just went over is definitely better than they've been, and better than LeBron has had in a few years. But health is the big concern, and I think if you're going to go with a Dallas breakdown of considering all the trends that you've seen with some of their players, I think you have to do the same thing with the Lakers. And I don't know that you're going to see Davis and LeBron play the bulk of the games throughout a long NBA season, especially given their LeBron's age. I like Austin Reeves. I like their ability to stay above water, at least in the games that those guys may miss. Like, I don't think they're going to just completely tank when those guys aren't playing like they had in the past. But, guys like Gabe Vincent and, Prince is all right. Hashimura, I don't know. I mean, I don't feel that great about some of those guys reaching the peak that they did last postseason. And like you said, D'Angelo Russell, does he even know? I would have pressed him on, do you know what the little things are? After that quote, do you know what you're talking about? Do you know what Derek White does? But I think their over under, I think, is 47.5. So they're a little bit 2 games ahead of the Grizzlies. I think that's a pretty high over under for a team that's got this much age on it, and unproven or, briefly proven talent. So I think they're going to be right around that number. I think if LeBron is able to stay somewhat healthy, I think they're right around that 45 to 48 wins. But I'm not ready to put them in the top 2 seeds like a lot of people are going into the season. I think they're going to be kind of around, like you said, like that 4 to 5, 3 range.
Yeah, and just for reference, last year they had 43 wins and went in
Yes.
as the 7th seed into the play-in tournament.
Yeah.
I can
So it's not a
see,
big improvement
yeah,
with a better roster. So it's not a big improvement.
not a big improvement. That would jump them up into probably about the 4 or the 5 seed. I again, that's not one. Vegas is pretty good on these over unders this year. It seems like that's not one that I would really want to flirt with too much, because
Right.
I think that the variance on this team is just way too high for me to want to put any money on
Definitely.
them. But they're going to be a fun team. I'm excited to watch it. I'm excited to see what happens. It's a lot of names where you're curious of how it's going to work out with that guy specifically, and then also within the context of the rest of that team. Okay, let's do a rematch of round 1 last year. We both have the Grizzlies moving on to face the Lakers. Jake, who you got?
I'm in the redemption season state of mind, so I'm going to take the Grizzlies. I think this would be really fun to see.
Hell yeah.
I think this would be really fun to see. I think Steven Adams and Brandon Clark healthy last year. I think even that goes in a different direction, like you said, but we won't get into that. But I would take Memphis, a fully healthy Memphis. I would take them over the Lakers. I just don't know that you're going to be able to, like, the advantages that they had in the series last year. I don't think are going to be even. They're going to be more even, if slightly disadvantages for them this time around, with the added front court depth that we didn't have last season. So I would take the Grizzlies. It would be a fun game, and be a lot of media, a lot of back and forth, a lot of trash talking. But I think this is kind of where the Grizzlies take their place above the Lakers.
I agree. I think it would really come down to having Steven Adams healthy. In the playoff series last year, the rebounding numbers were atrocious for the Grizzlies. Just couldn't end possessions. Just could never get the ball back. Just multiple second shots for Rui Hachimura to knock in. And so I would also take the Grizzlies. I think that the outside shooting, the ceiling on the Grizzlies outside shooting is much higher than the Lakers. And then again, with a healthy front court, I think there's enough bodies to throw up against Anthony Davis if he even makes it through 4 quarters, to at least wear him down and to keep him from dominating the board. So I also have the Grizzlies moving forward. I think it would be a fun game, but I think the Grizzlies are a better constructed team this year with less variables. All right, next on the list, we have the Chicago Bulls. Let's see.
The fun Bulls.
The fun Bulls.
Said no one in the last 10 years.
Yeah, they're it's not a joy to watch. It's they're definitely not advancing the game. But they're not terrible. Their preseason roster is as follows: Kobe White, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, Patrick Williams, Nikola Vucevic. Coming off the bench, we have Javon Carter, former Grizzly, Alex Caruso, Dalen Terry, not sure who that is, Torrey Craig, Andre Drummond, still collecting paychecks. Good to see. Adama Sanago, Terry Taylor, Ayo Basunmu, and then very unfortunately we have Lonzo Ball, who we don't expect to see for this season.
Yeah, I think the whole season.
He's
already said he's not going to play.
Yeah, he's out for the entire season. Missed pretty much all of last season, which is just terrible. I think that this team could have been a lot of fun. I was never a fan of the Vucevic trade. The idea that he's an all-star never made any sense to me. Whenever he came from Orlando and people thought that there was a big three there, I just never really saw it. I just don't see what he really adds that's exceptional. He's not an exceptional rebounder. He's not an exceptional shooter. He's not an exceptional post-up guy. Not exceptional defender. He's a good player, but he's never changing the ceiling for a team for me. And then you just look around at the rest of the roster. I thought that they made a very valiant push at the end of last year to try to get into the playoffs. Almost won the play-in game in Miami. But I think that there are other teams that, as long as they stay healthy, I think that the Bulls are probably going to lose pace in the East pretty early this season. I don't see them contending for one of the top 6 seeds at all. I think best case scenarios, they're back at the bottom end of the play-in tournament.
Yep. I would agree with that there. I mean, you look at those teams behind the Bulls, right? The Pacers improved, the Magic improved. I'd even say the Pistons improved. I don't know if they're going to be better than the Bulls, but really everybody behind the Bulls improved. And I think the Bulls are a year older. DeMar DeRozan is already being talked about in trades this offseason. LaVine has been tossed around. The Lonzo injury a couple years ago really put a damper on something that they kind of threw together there, which was fun, which sucks because everybody loves Lonzo. But
everybody loves Lonzo.
I really hate it. It's really poor the way this franchise has been run the last few years. And
wait, are you calling the Bulls a poverty franchise?
They're close to it. I mean, I know they're in your backyard, but
I have no allegiances.
I do like the addition of Javon Carter, former Grizzly. They have some defensive guys in the backcourt there with Caruso. Like, they could definitely scrape together, and if they get a good, healthy LaVine season, and maybe if Patrick Williams finally shows something worth the top 5 pick that he was, like, I could see them being scrappy and like fighting for that 10 or the 9th or 10th seed again. But that's like a ceiling scenario. And I don't think that you feel like good about them going into the season when that's kind of their ceiling. And I think their season over under is 37.5. Like you said, a lot of these are spot on, and they won 40 last year. But I'd if I was forced to bet that number, I'd probably go under, and that would probably trigger a trade or a rebuild in that in Chicago. So that's kind of where I'm at with them, is that they're pretty close to a trade or some type of mini rebuild with the core that they have.
That was going to be my question to you was, do you think that this roster looks anything like this come April, come March? And, I think if they don't seem to be excelling as a team and you do have a healthy Zach LaVine season, I see him being on the trading block. I think that Patrick Williams, somebody could use him. Somebody could use Torrey Craig. He's a decent rotation player. A team that is lacking some size for a playoff run could come in and scoop up Andre Drummond. I think that the Bulls could definitely be a seller come the first part of next year. And so,
Well, one thing too is that I think the smart decision would be to do all that, but they've been run so poorly that I don't know if they'll do it. And they could do, I know it's different circumstances, but something that the Nets did last year, getting rid of the stars and kind of rebuilding their war chest of assets and picks and young players. They Levine, DeRozan, Vucevic, those guys could fetch something in return. I just don't know that they're gonna pull the trigger. And so I kind of feel like they're just in this mediocre middle ground, like purgatory.
Yeah, let's see. I'm looking at their draft situation.
Their pick went to the Magic last year. Still the Vucevic trade.
Let's see. They have the Blazers pick. Wait, what is this? What are the Blazers on here? Oh, top 14 protected. They lose their pick if they're outside the top 14 to the Blazers this year. So they also have incentive to not be good.
Very true.
And
this may be the season that actually they accept reality and do it. I would say sooner than later, get some of these young guys. You've got some good drafts coming up. You're not barren with assets. Like, you have players that could get you something in return for these desperate playoff teams.
Right.
So I think if they jumped in and actually got to the table for some of these, like the Sixers or, the Bucks even, or like the Clippers or somebody like that, that's a little bit desperate, maybe you could get something in return. Maybe even the Heat. Maybe you get some of the Heat's assets and young players for one of those guys.
Yeah, it's terrible, the Lonzo situation, but as an organization, you have it on the front end that he's not playing this year. You don't have to sit around and wait. Last year, they thought that last year going into the season, it was their year to see if they had it or not. And then it all fell apart with Lonzo. You don't even have the makings of a team that's going to be competitive, because once they lost Lonzo, they fell off. Their record, had they played a full season last year without Lonzo, they wouldn't have even made the play-in tournament. They eked in, based off of what their record was to start the season. And so, I think that this whole team is going to be disassembled. I don't really see Billy Donovan sticking around for the rebuild. I mean, I don't know what, I'm not sure what the feeling is in-house with Billy Donovan, but I can't imagine that anyone's just super stoked to have him around for a fifth or sixth season.
I think there's a little better likelihood that he ends up back in college than anything. Some big program pulls him back in.
Yeah. Hasn't had a ton of success. I mean, hasn't been in the greatest situations, but also just hasn't had a ton of success.
No, not a bad coach, just kind of not great situations.
37.5 is a tough number. I'd probably go on the underside if I was going to bet it, just assuming, adding in the possibility that they're big sellers around the trade deadline. We can go ahead and do the head-to-head matchup. Bulls Grizz. Jake, we can probably not take too much time on this one.
Pretty easy. Grizzlies running away. There's nothing really else to say there with those two.
I did go to Grizz Bulls last year, and the Grizzlies lost, and it sucked. But I think if they were to run it back this year, I think that the Grizzlies win.
Well, they had Patrick Beverley last year, so that's a wild card.
That's
He's
true.
Probably top 5 point guard in the league. So
that's true. Okay, so the Grizzlies are moving on for both of us. All right.